Do you remember when Christmas lasted for weeks, not just a single day? Before instant messages and online shopping, the holiday season was filled with rituals that brought communities together. Today we're exploring 25 cherished Christmas traditions that have faded from American celebrations. Let's start with Twelfth Night King Cake. On January 5th and 6th, families gathered for one last Christmas celebration with a special cake hiding a dried bean or tiny charm inside. Whoever found the bean in their slice became the king or queen for the evening, wearing a paper crown and leading games of charades or blind man's bluff. This tradition marked the official end of Christmastide, 12 days after Christmas, when decorations came down and normal life resumed. The cake itself was often a rich fruit cake soaked in brandy or a sweet bread studded with candied fruit. Children squealed with excitement as each slice was cut, hoping to find the hidden treasure. Some families included a dried pea alongside the bean to crown both a king and queen. The tradition came from medieval Europe and thrived in America through the 1940s before gradually disappearing as extended holiday celebrations, door-to-door wassailing. Picture a snowy December evening when your doorbell rings and a group of neighbors stands singing on your porch, not for charity, but for a ladle of hot-spiced punch. Wassailing wasn't just caroling, it was a social contract where singers offered good wishes in exchange for warm hospitality. The wassail bowl, filled with mulled cider, ale, or wine mixed with eggs and spices, sat ready by the door throughout the season. Groups would travel from house to house, their voices growing merrier with each stop. The traditional greeting "Ways Hail" meant "be in good health," and hosts responded with treats and toast. Some regions practiced orchard wassailing, where people sang to apple trees to ensure a good harvest. This intimate neighborhood tradition connected communities in ways that modern caroling at shopping malls never could. By the 1960s, liability concerns and changing social norms ended the custom of inviting singers inside for drinks. Yule log kept burning. The Yule log wasn't just decorative, it was the spiritual heart of Christmas, a massive oak or ash log that needed to burn continuously from Christmas Eve through Twelfth Night. Families searched their property for the perfect log weeks in advance, often selecting one that barely fit through the door. The previous year's saved piece would light the new log, maintaining an unbroken chain of Christmas fires. Children were warned that letting the fire die would bring terrible luck. The constant tending required someone to stay up through the night, adding wood and adjusting the log with special iron tools. Ashes were carefully collected and saved, believed to protect against lightning, heal wounds, and fertilize gardens. Some families placed coins on the burning log, retrieving the heated money for good fortune. The tradition required a proper hearth and unlimited firewood, luxuries that disappeared as homes shifted to central heating. Today's television Yule logs can't match the crackling warmth and smoky scent of the real thing. Candlelit Christmas trees. Before electric lights, Christmas trees glowed with real flames from tiny wax candles clipped to branches with metal holders. Families would light them for just 15 or 20 minutes on Christmas Eve, while everyone gathered to sing carols with buckets of water and wet sponges stationed nearby. The candles, often homemade from beeswax or tallow, cost a fortune for enough to properly light a tree. Special counterweighted holders kept candles upright as branches sagged. Children were strictly forbidden from touching the tree, and adults assigned fire watch duties never left the room. The brief illumination made the moment feel sacred and precious. Nothing like today's trees that stay lit for weeks. Insurance companies began refusing coverage for candle-caused fires in the 1920s, hastening the switch to electric bulbs. German immigrants brought this tradition to America in the 1800s, and it persisted in rural areas into the 1940s. That dangerous beauty of flickering flames through pine needles created a magical atmosphere modern LED lights simply can't replicate. Christmas goose dinner. Long before turkey dominated American Christmas tables, Roast goose reigned as the holiday's premier feast, its rich, dark meat and crackling skin marking true celebration. A properly prepared goose required days of preparation, hanging in cold storage to age, then pricking the skin hundreds of times to render the abundant fat. The precious goose grease was saved for months, used for everything from waterproofing boots to treating chest colds. Stuffed with apples, onions, and sage, the bird roasted for hours while cooks constantly drained the fat. A 10-pound goose cost a week's wages for many families, making it a once-yearly indulgence. The traditional accompaniments included red cabbage, chestnuts, and gooseberry sauce. Goose clubs allowed families to pay weekly installments all year to afford their Christmas bird. The decline came after World War II, when broader turkey breasts better fed growing families and suburban kitchens couldn't handle the smoke and splatter. Today's free-range goose can cost over $100, putting this historic centerpiece out of reach for most. Plum pudding flambé. The climax of Christmas dinner once involved a dark, dense pudding carried to the table wreathed in blue flames, a spectacle that took months of preparation. Stir-up Sunday, 5 weeks before Christmas, saw the entire family take turns stirring the mixture of sweet, dried fruit, spices, and breadcrumbs while making wishes. The pudding steamed for 8 hours initially, then again for 3 hours on Christmas Day, filling homes with spicy sweetness. Despite its name, plum pudding contained no plums. Plum meant any dried fruit in medieval times. The mixture included 13 ingredients representing Christ and the apostles, plus silver coins, rings, and thimbles predicting wealth, marriage, or spinsterhood for lucky finders. Warm brandy poured over the hot pudding ignited into a ghostly blue flame that danced across the dark surface. Hard sauce, a mixture of butter, sugar, and more brandy, melted into golden pools over each serving. The tradition required specialized pudding basins, long steaming times, and comfort with open flames at the table. Modern fire codes and smoke detectors ended this dramatic dessert ritual. Taffy pull parties. Winter evenings between Christmas and New Year's once meant gathering for taffy pulls, where making candy became competitive entertainment, requiring strength, timing, and plenty of butter. The host would boil sugar, corn syrup, and butter to exactly 270 degrees, then pour it onto greased marble slabs or platters to cool just enough to handle. Participants buttered their hands thoroughly before grabbing portions of the scorching candy, pulling and folding it repeatedly until it turned from amber to cream-colored. Partners worked together, stretching the taffy into long ropes, doubling it back, pulling again until their arms ached. The candy gradually cooled and hardened, requiring quick work to pull it into thin ropes before it became too stiff. Expert pullers produced taffy with a satiny sheen and perfect chew. Young men showed off their strength, while young women demonstrated their confectionery skills. The finished taffy was cut with buttered scissors into bite-sized pieces and wrapped in waxed paper. These social gatherings combined courtship, competition, and candy making in ways no modern activity matches. Popcorn and cranberry garlands. Families spent December evenings threading needles with strong thread, piercing fresh cranberries and fluffy popcorn to create yards of natural garland. The work required patience. Cranberries could split, popcorn crumbled if too dry, or molded if too moist, and pricked fingers were inevitable. Children learned to alternate 3 pieces of popcorn with each cranberry, creating a rhythm of white and red. The corn had to be popped without oil or salt, left to sit overnight to toughen slightly. Fresh cranberries worked best, though some families used dried berries that needed soaking first. A single tree required 50 feet or more of garland, representing hours of communal work. The stringing became a social event with stories, songs, and hot cocoa. These garlands gave off a subtle scent and attracted winter birds when hung outside after Christmas. By the 1950s, shiny tinsel and manufactured garlands replaced these handmade chains. The tradition connected families to nature and each other through simple, repetitive craft that modern decorating lacks entirely. Which of these forgotten traditions do you remember from your childhood? Moravian Poots villages. Beneath Christmas trees across Pennsylvania and North Carolina, elaborate miniature landscapes called Pootses recreated the journey to Bethlehem with incredible detail. These weren't simple nativity scenes, but entire worlds with multiple levels, working waterfalls made from hidden pumps and tinfoil, and electric trains winding through painted plaster mountains. Families collected materials all year: moss for hills, mirrors for ponds, twigs for trees, and sand for desert scenes. The building began in early December, with cardboard and newspaper forming the basic terrain, then covered with painted sheets to create realistic landscapes. Tiny lead or composition figures populated various biblical scenes from the Annunciation through the flight to Egypt. Some Pootses filled entire rooms, with visitors touring through prescribed paths to view each scene in order. Churches held Poots competitions, and families opened their homes for neighborhood viewings. The tradition required basements or spare rooms, extensive storage space, and weeks of setup time that modern life rarely allows. Today's simple nativity sets can't capture the immersive storytelling these elaborate displays provided. Train set around the tree. The gentle clickety-clack of a Lionel or American Flyer train circling the Christmas tree provided the soundtrack to holiday mornings from the 1920s through the 1960s. These weren't toys, but serious model railroads with heavy die-cast engines, detailed cars, and enough track to loop around even the largest tree. Fathers and sons spent hours setting up elaborate layouts with bridges, tunnels cut from boxes, and mirror ponds. The distinctive smell of ozone from electric motors mixed with pine needles. Trains carried tiny presents from person to person or hauled candy canes to waiting children. The expensive sets often took years of savings or became hand-me-downs through generations. Transformers hummed, providing variable speed control that required constant adjustment. Some families ran their trains continuously through the 12 days of Christmas, the rhythmic sound becoming as essential as carols. By the 1970s, video games and slot cars replaced model trains as the must-have gift, and these mechanical marvels retreated to hobbyist basements. Bayberry candle to the socket. A Bayberry candle burned to the socket brings food to the larder and gold to the pocket. This colonial rhyme drove a Christmas Eve tradition that lasted into the 1950s. Real bayberry candles, made from the waxy coating of bayberry shrubs, took enormous effort to produce. 15 pounds of berries yielded just 1 pound of wax. The pale green candles gave off a distinctive, clean, peppery scent that meant prosperity and good fortune. Families lit their precious bayberry candle at sunset on Christmas Eve, keeping vigil to ensure it burned completely without being extinguished. The tradition required someone to stay awake all night, as blowing out the candle would reverse the luck. Some families saved their single bayberry candle all year for this one night. The genuine article became increasingly rare and expensive as coastal bayberry habitats disappeared. Modern bayberry candles use synthetic scents that can't match the authentic smell. The patient overnight vigil has no place in today's instant gratification culture, but those who remember speak of the peaceful contemplation those long hours provided. Orange in the stocking. During the Depression and war years, finding a fresh orange in your Christmas stocking felt like receiving gold. These exotic fruits traveling thousands of miles from California or Florida. That bright sphere nestled in the toe represented sunshine during the darkest days of winter, a burst of vitamin C when fresh fruit was just a summer memory. Children would carefully peel their orange, saving the aromatic skin to perfume dresser drawers. Some made the fruit last for days, eating one segment at a time. The orange tradition supposedly honored Saint Nicholas, who left gold coins in stockings that transformed into golden fruit. Families also included walnuts, which required special crackers and picks to extract the meat, a patience-building Christmas morning activity. The orange's arrival marked the beginning of citrus season, when fruit wagons and stores finally stocked fresh produce again. By the 1960s, year-round supermarket fruit made oranges ordinary, and candy canes replaced them as stocking essentials. That simple orange represented scarcity, seasonality, and celebration in ways modern abundance can't recreate. Belsnickel visits. Before Santa Claus dominated American Christmas, German-American communities in Pennsylvania knew a different gift-bringer, Belsnickel, a gruff figure in furs and rags who arrived in early December. Unlike Jolly Santa, Belsnickel carried switches alongside treats, quizzing children on their behavior and schoolwork before deciding their fate. He'd rap on windows with his stick, entering homes with bells jangling from his belt, his face darkened with burnt cork or hidden behind a frightening mask. Children had to sing a song, recite a prayer, or answer questions about their catechism before receiving nuts, cakes, or small coins. Those who failed got light switches on the knuckles or legs. The tradition served as a dress rehearsal for Christmas proper, with Belsnickel warning children to improve before St. Nicholas arrived. Local men took turns playing Belsnickel, disguising their voices with growls and speaking Pennsylvania Dutch. The custom faded after World War I as German traditions became unpopular, replaced by the gentler Coca-Cola Santa who never carried switches. St. Nicholas Day shoes. December 6th. Once rivaled Christmas itself when children across immigrant communities set out their best shoes by the fireplace or front door, hoping St. Nicholas would fill them overnight. The tradition required serious shoe polishing the night before. Only clean, shiny shoes received treats. Good children found their shoes filled with gold chocolate coins, oranges, nuts, and small toys. Bad children discovered switches, coal, or onions. Some families included a carrot or hay for St. Nicholas's horse. The evening of December 5th involved special prayers and stories about the historical St. Nicholas, Bishop of Myra, who secretly gave gold to save 3 sisters from poverty. German, Dutch, and Polish families maintained this tradition through the 1960s. The shoes had to be your own, no borrowing Dad's boots for extra capacity. This preview of Christmas taught patience and built anticipation through the long December weeks. Modern families who've revived the tradition find it provides a quieter, more intimate celebration than the Christmas morning frenzy. Share your favorite memory of these classic Christmas traditions in the comments below. Christmas Club Savings Books. Starting each January, millions of Americans once made weekly pilgrimages to their local bank or department store to deposit quarters, dollars, or $5 bills into special Christmas Club accounts. These passbook savings plans, which peaked in the 1960s, helped families save systematically for holiday expenses without the temptation to raid the funds. Banks issued special coupon books with dated squares for each week's deposit. Miss a week, and you'd face gentle scolding from the teller who knew you by name. The accounts paid no interest, but that didn't matter. The forced discipline was the real value. Come December, members received their accumulated savings in a lump sum, often at festive club parties with cookies and punch. Some clubs issued special Christmas Club checks that could only be spent at participating stores. For working-class families, these accounts meant avoiding holiday debt or disappointing children. The ritual of weekly deposits, watching the balance grow, and anticipating that December payout gave structure to the entire year. Sears Wishbook Ritual. The arrival of the Sears Christmas Wishbook in late summer launched months of careful study, negotiation, and dreaming in households across America. This 600-page catalog, which peaked in thickness during the 1970s, became the family's evening entertainment as children spent hours circling desired toys with different colored pens. Parents used it to teach budgeting, having kids narrow their lists to realistic choices. The toy section alone ran 200 pages, featuring elaborate displays of train sets, dollhouses, and bikes. Siblings negotiated trades. I'll give up the chemistry set if you don't ask for the slot car track. Dog-eared pages marked the most coveted items. The catalog served rural families who couldn't reach department stores, offering everything from underwear to refrigerators. Writing the actual letter to Santa required careful transcription of catalog numbers and page references. The wishbook disappeared in 1993 as malls and internet shopping took over. That tactile experience of slowly turning pages, comparing options, and building anticipation over months has no modern equivalent. Cookie swap socials. Rather than baking dozens of different cookies, neighborhood women once gathered for cookie exchanges where each baker brought 12 dozen of a single recipe. These December parties, popular from the 1940s through the 1970s, required serious planning and quality control. Each participant submitted their recipe in advance to avoid duplicates. The hostess provided coffee, punch, and sampling plates. Women arrived with their cookies arranged in bakery boxes or tins, often decorated with ribbons and recipe cards. The formal exchange followed strict rules. If 12 women participated, each brought 12 dozen cookies and left with a dozen each of 12 varieties. This meant one marathon baking session instead of weeks of different batches. Recipes became closely guarded secrets, with some women famous for their butterhorns or spring roll. The socializing mattered as much as the cookies, with hours of gossip, recipe tips, and family updates. These gatherings reinforced community bonds and established pecking orders based on baking prowess. Community carol sings. Town squares and church steps once filled with hundreds of voices on December evenings as entire communities gathered for public carol sings. These weren't performances, but participatory events where everyone sang, whether they could carry a tune or not. Local brass bands or organs provided accompaniment, while volunteers handed out mimeographed song sheets. The mayor or minister led the singing, starting with familiar carols before attempting ambitious harmonies on Silent Night or Angels We Have Heard on High. Hot cocoa stations, staffed by service clubs, offered free drinks from giant urns. Children sat on fathers' shoulders, their small voices joining the chorus. These gatherings happened regardless of weather. Snow and cold just added atmosphere. Everyone knew to wear their warmest coats and bring flashlights for reading lyrics. The events required no tickets, no professional singers, just neighbors raising voices together in the dark. Television and suburban sprawl killed these gatherings as families retreated to private celebrations, losing that sense of unified community voice. Candlelight midnight service. Churches once saved electricity for one magical service as Christmas Eve moved into Christmas Day, with congregations passing flame from candle to candle until hundreds of small lights pierced the darkness. The service began at 11:30, with ushers distributing white candles pushed through paper-drip guards. At midnight exactly, the pastor lit the Christ candle, then shared that flame with the ushers, who spread down the aisles, lighting the end of each pew. The light traveled from person to person, requiring careful tilting. Always tip the unlit candle, never the burning one. Children watched mesmerized as the wave of light approached their row. The congregation sang Silent Night by candlelight alone, voices hushed in the intimate glow. Wax dripped despite the guards, leaving spots on good coats and church carpets that nobody minded. The service ended with bells ringing and everyone raising their candles high while singing Joy to the World. Modern fire marshals and insurance companies have largely banned this tradition, replacing real flames with battery-powered candles that can't match the warmth and symbol of shared light. Oyster stew on Christmas Eve. The Christmas Eve supper in many American homes once centered on a simple pot of oyster stew, a tradition that made sense when fresh oysters arrived by rail in their peak season. This wasn't fancy cuisine, just whole milk, butter, oysters, and their liquor, salt and pepper, maybe some celery or onion. The preparation took mere minutes. Heat milk and butter without boiling, add oysters just until their edges curled. Season, and serve immediately with oyster crackers. Catholic families appreciated this meatless option for Christmas Eve fasting. Protestant families saw it as properly modest before the next day's feast. The tradition was strongest in the Midwest, hundreds of miles from any ocean, where oysters felt special and expensive. Families debated the proper ratio of oysters to milk, whether to add cream, and if paprika or hot sauce was acceptable. The ritual included checking each oyster for pearls, though finding one was vanishingly rare. By the 1970s, concerns about shellfish safety and changing tastes ended this simple tradition. Ribbon candy at home. Before artisan candy shops, ambitious home cooks spent December afternoons pulling hot sugar into glossy ribbon candy, a feat requiring perfect timing, strong arms, and steady nerves. The process began with boiling sugar, corn syrup, and cream of tartar to exactly 270 degrees. Too cool, and it stayed sticky. Too hot, and it turned bitter. The molten candy poured onto a greased marble slab where edges were constantly folded inward as it cooled. At the critical moment, the candy maker grabbed the mass and began pulling, stretching it into a rope, doubling it back, pulling again. Each pull incorporated air, changing the candy from transparent to satiny opaque. Peppermint oil or other flavoring went in during pulling, filling the kitchen with aroma. The pulled candy was quickly rolled thin, cut into strips, and folded into accordion pleats before it hardened completely. One batch might yield 2 pounds of candy from 4 cups of sugar. These delicate ribbons shattered at a touch, melting on the tongue with intense flavor. Machine-made ribbon candy never matched the texture of hand-pulled versions. And which memories of Christmas past resonate most with you? Let us know below. Handwritten Christmas letters. Before social media updates and email newsletters, families composed lengthy Christmas letters detailing their year's adventures, tragedies, and triumphs in flowing cursive or careful print. These multi-page epistles, often written over several evenings, required real reflection on the passing year. Mothers usually served as family scribes, chronicling everything from Junior's baseball season to grandmother's hip surgery. The letters were photocopied at the drugstore or typed with carbon paper to make multiple copies. Each envelope got a personal note added to the general letter. Some families included wallet-sized school photos or a family portrait from Sears. The writing process itself became a ritual of remembrance and gratitude. Recipients saved these letters, creating archives of family history. The tradition required time, thoughtfulness, and decent penmanship. By the 1990s, computer-printed newsletters replaced handwriting, then email updates replaced paper altogether. Today's Facebook posts can't match the intimacy of those handwritten chronicles that connected far-flung families once a year. Brown paper, twine-wrapped gifts, department stores once wrapped purchases in brown paper and white string, creating packages that looked modest but felt substantial and mysterious. This utilitarian wrapping became an art form as families saved and ironed brown grocery bags, cutting them into sheets for wrapping. Real twine or yarn replaced ribbon, often saved from previous years and wound onto spools. Decorations came from nature, a sprig of pine, a dried flower, or holly berries tucked under the string. Some families used red sealing wax pressed with a signet ring to secure the twine intersections. The brown paper served as a canvas for hand-drawn pictures or poems written in fountain pen. Children learned to wrap with hospital corners and to tie proper knots that held but could be undone to save the string. The unwrapping process took patience as knots were carefully picked apart and paper smoothed for reuse. This Depression-era thriftiness persisted into the 1960s, teaching resourcefulness and creativity. Today's mountains of branded wrapping paper and stick-on bows lack the personal touch and environmental consciousness of those simple brown packages. Twelfth Night Tree Bonfire. January the 6th once meant dragging dried Christmas trees to community bonfires, where neighborhoods gathered to officially close the holiday season with flames reaching toward winter stars. Fire departments supervised these controlled burns in vacant lots or parks, often adding other yard waste to create massive blazes. Families brought thermoses of coffee and cocoa, marshmallows for toasting, and leftover Christmas cookies to share. The trees, tinder dry after 3 weeks indoors, exploded into flames with distinctive pops and crackles. Children threw their written wishes for the new year into the flames. Some communities read the Twelfth Night scene from Shakespeare or told ghost stories around the fire. The burning released the piney scent one last time while neighbors caught up after the holiday rush. Everyone stayed until the fire died to glowing embers. These bonfires built community and provided closure to the extended celebration. By the 1970s, liability concerns and air quality regulations ended most municipal tree burns. Today's curbside pickup and recycling programs handle disposal efficiently, but without the communal ritual of watching the season literally go up in smoke. House-to-house charity baskets. The week before Christmas once saw anonymous baskets appearing on doorsteps of struggling families, filled with ham, potatoes, canned goods, and toys, leaving grateful recipients wondering which neighbors had helped. Churches and social clubs organized these giving campaigns, but individuals also acted independently, secretly learning who needed help through careful community networking. The baskets, often literal woven baskets decorated with ribbons, contained practical items like coal for heating, new socks and mittens, and ingredients for a full holiday dinner. Donors included homemade preserves, fresh bread, and hand-knit scarves. The giving required detective work to discover needs without embarrassing recipients. Deliveries happened at night, with a knock on the door and footsteps running away before anyone could answer. Some families found their entire coal bin mysteriously refilled, or a cord of split wood stacked by their door. Children might discover new sleds propped against the porch with no cart attached. This secret giving preserved dignity while building community bonds. Modern charity remains important, but lacks the intimate knowledge and personal investment of neighbors helping neighbors anonymously. Thanks for joining us on this trip down memory lane, exploring these 25 unforgettable Christmas traditions. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe.